I never imagined a single aircraft could reshape my dreams, until it vanished into history. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It was surreal. The sky was an unbroken blue, untouched by fear or uncertainty. Yet, that day, something heavy sat in the air, like a storm waiting to break. I was standing on the edge of the tarmac, my heart thumping in my chest, feeling the vibrations of the engine's roar. My hands trembled, clasping the small model plane I'd made for my father. He adored aviation. Every story, every line etched in his weathered face spoke of a time when dreams took flight. That morning felt different, electric, charged with an unshakable feeling that something monumental was about to happen. But it all crumbled. The aircraft, a gleaming marvel of modern technology, soared upwards like a bird released from its cage. I watched, wide-eyed, heart racing, as it vanished into the horizon, leaving a trail of white smoke that curled eerily against the blue expanse. Then silence, pure, deafening silence. The crowd around me murmured, unsure, fragmented theories spilling forth. Technical failure? The pilot's skills? Each question landed like stones in my gut. I pushed through the throng, my pulse quickened. I could sense the whispers behind me, the apprehension thickening the air. I thought of my father waiting at home, the excitement in his eyes when I told him I was going to watch that flight. It never crossed my mind that day would mark the end of innocence, an end to our shared dreams of soaring through the clouds, feeling weightless and free. I found myself staring at the spot where the aircraft had vanished. My breath hitched in my throat. Anxiety clawed at my insides. What had just happened? Was it really gone? Or was there something more, something darker woven into that disappearance? The questions hammered inside my head, each one more urgent than the last. I could feel my hands shake, my heart pounding as if trying to escape from the cage of my chest. Moments dragged. And then it came, the explosion. A sudden, blinding flash. The ground trembled underfoot. I froze, chasing the echoes of disbelief. A rush of panic surged through the crowd. People screamed, scattering, faces pale and wild. My world, once so clear, now spun in chaos. I couldn't comprehend the sight before me. There it was, the smoke still rising a sinister shade of black against the sky. But what did it mean? I stood there, heart racing, mind spiraling. The dreams that had taken residence in my heart felt like they were bursting into flames. Could hope survive this? Could our spirit still soar? And just like that, with the acrid scent of fear heavy in the air, the future slithered away, leaving only a haunting question: what truly happened to that aircraft? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The day after the tragedy, I woke to a world divided, encased in a shroud of grief and confusion. The news flooded in, not just about the crash but the ramifications, the aftermath. I wanted to disregard it all, retreat into the sanctuary of my thoughts where dreams still soared, but the reality loomed larger than ever. The world outside my window was alive with details that my quaking heart could barely process. Friends' calls poured in, concerned voices, hesitant questions. Have you heard from your dad? Are you okay? But what was okay anymore? The question hung in the air, unanswerable, and I felt a visceral need to withdraw, to preserve what remained of my shattered hope. But the ache of uncertainty gnawed at me, far worse than the headlines plastered across every platform. As I trudged through my day, echoes of my father's laughter filled my mind. I could almost hear him, recounting tales of his first flight, his eyes alight with excitement. He had been my compass through the turbulence of adolescence, guiding me toward my dreams and providing wings made of belief. But now, that compass seemed broken, spinning wildly in a storm with no direction. That I found solace in a small cafe, the usual thrill of the bustling atmosphere lost on me. The scent of freshly baked pastries and strong coffee curled around me, warm and inviting, a flicker of comfort amidst the chilling reality outside. I sat near the window, lost in thought, when a soft voice broke through. "Is this seat taken?" I looked up, startled to see a middle-aged woman, her eyes reflecting both kindness and pain. I shook my head, and she sat down, placing her own cup of coffee on the table. "I didn't mean to intrude," she said, sensing my hesitation. "I just figured it might help to share a moment with someone." There was something comforting in her presence, and without thinking, I opened up. "Did you hear about the crash?" "My father." I paused, the words gathering like heavy stones on my tongue. He was supposed to be at the event that day. Her face softened, and she listened intently as I poured out the chaos brewing inside my chest. She shared her own story. Her brother was a retired pilot, someone who had witnessed both joy and heartbreak in the skies. In her eyes, I saw mirrored reflections: confusion, sorrow, and, beyond it all, the fragile thread of hope. We spoke for hours, strangers bound by the invisible threads of loss and lingering questions. When we finally parted ways, she placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "Hope has a way of finding us, even in the most unexpected places. It may not feel like it now, but something good can still emerge from this darkness." As I walked home, I found myself replaying her words. Could I hold on to hope when the future seemed so uncertain? I tried to envision my father, how he would have reassured me, how he would have seen this tragedy not just as a loss, but as a moment to honor our dreams more than ever before. Stepping into our home, however, the weight of reality struck hard. The silence was deafening. The model plane I made for my father sat untouched on the table, the one crafted with such care, now only a testament to dreams that once felt unbreakable. As I reached for it, a sudden thought gripped me. What if I had been too late in finding him? What if my father was searching for me in the same void I felt? The air felt thick as I dialed his number, hands trembling, heart racing. Maybe I was dreaming. Perhaps he would answer and we could laugh about how I overreacted. But the rings echoed back, unanswered, and I could feel the shadows of fear creeping deeper into my heart. And then, as a last glimmer of unwarranted courage ignited within me, I heard the soft chime of a message notification. I paused, throat dry, before opening it. "We need to talk. I know what happened to the aircraft." The message simply read. My heart jolted. Who could it be, and why now? The sheer weight of that revelation settled heavily in the pit of my stomach. The darkness had only begun to unveil itself, and the storm, it seemed, was far from over. Every step I took toward the couch felt heavy, as if I were wading through a thick fog of anxiety and dread. The air hung heavy with anticipation, filled with questions circling in my mind like predators. Who could know what happened? I couldn't even grasp the last moments that had transpired on that fateful flight, let alone those who might have been privy to the truth. That I sank into the couch, staring hungrily at my phone. The starkness of the message loomed large: "We need to talk. I know what happened to the aircraft." It felt threatening, as if the weight of the world were pressing down on my chest, making it impossible to breathe. Should I respond? My fingers hovered over the screen, hesitating before I mustered the courage to type back, "Who is this? What do you know?" After what felt like an eternity, the dots danced on the screen, signaling an incoming reply. "Meet me at the cafe tomorrow at 10 a.m. I'll explain everything." The dread within me was eclipsed by a simmering curiosity. I had never been one to crave confrontation or chase after painful truths, but the possibility of untangling my father's last moments was a siren call I couldn't ignore. I was terrified and intrigued in equal measure, a cocktail of emotions swirling within me that made my heart race. As the hours passed, sleep eluded me. I replayed snippets of memories with my father, cherished moments when we laughed over his wild stories and wild flights, the way the rhythms of his laughter echoed through our home. Without him, everything seemed muted, and yet, here was a chance not just for closure, but to take hold of my life again, to reclaim the dreams that felt lost in the debris of those moments. The dawn of the meeting came too quickly. I found myself at the cafe, anxiously fiddling with my cup as I sat at the same table where I'd found comfort the day before. The familiar sounds of clinking utensils and soft chatter were both soothing and aggravating. A buzz of energy pulsed around me, highlighting how life danced on outside my grief, while I remained attached to this tender thread of hope. With every minute that passed, my stomach twisted tighter with anxiety. Who was going to walk through that door? The bustling cafe faded into the background as I watched the entrance, my heart drumming a nervous cadence. Finally, I spotted her, an older woman with a kind but weary visage. She moved with purpose, and I felt a strange sense of recognition wash over me as she approached. "That I am Sarah," she said, sliding into the chair opposite me. There was a familiarity in her tone that felt unsettling yet comforting at once. "That I don't know what you know," but I trailed off, grappling with the raw emotions that threatened to spill over. "Your father's flight was not just a tragic accident," she began, her eyes heavy with sorrow. "I can't tell you all the details, but there was something more. A warning, a concern, a call that didn't get answered in time." My breath caught in my throat, a chasm of disbelief swallowing me whole. Everything I had tried to digest, the loss, the helplessness, now felt like a deceptive mirage. "What do you mean? Was it something wrong with the plane, or there were complications, hidden issues that were brushed aside?" she interrupted, her voice a steady whisper filled with purpose. "Your father, he was aware. He tried to communicate it, but he couldn't convince them in time." The pain of it struck deep, a sharp jab to the already fractured remnants of my heart. He knew. The thought twisted in my mind like a knife, visions of his struggle and the weight he carried pushing against my sanity. "I wish I could have reached him sooner," she said, her voice trembling. "He was passionate, optimistic. Sometimes that clouded his judgment." "I'm so very sorry," the words spiraled through my mind, churning until they became a tempestuous storm of anger and regret. My father, the fearless pilot, the man who believed boundlessly, was trapped in a cage of impending doom, and I had spent my hours bitterly drowning in the void he left. "Why didn't you speak up? Why didn't anyone listen?" "We tried," she murmured, her voice thick. "Your father wasn't the only one who understood the risks." Her eyes widened suddenly, and together we turned, drawn toward a figure approaching our table. My breath caught again, a scream forming silently in my throat as the realization hit me. It was a man I recognized, someone linked to my father's career, a co-worker, a man who had once shared bright laughter with him. Sensing the tension, he approached cautiously, his expression a ghost of guilt and sorrow. "I think we need to talk," he said, his voice cracking like fragile glass. The storm had not merely begun, it had only intensified, unraveling truths I never anticipated. I glanced at Sarah, fear and determination grappling within me as the weight of this surreal moment pressed heavily upon the fragile fabric of my heart. The journey had morphed from a search for closure to one teetering on the precipice of uncharted truths, and with this reckoning, new questions ignited in the shadows of grief. What would happen next? What more was at stake? The cafe was silent except for the muted clatter of coffee cups and the soft hum of indistinct chatter, as if the universe held its breath for the weighty conversation about to unfold. My heart raced, a wild drumbeat of apprehension and fervor. Here was someone who might hold more pieces of the puzzle, but also, shards of truth I wasn't sure I was ready to face. "James," the man said as he reached our table, his hand extended in a gesture I wanted so desperately to accept but reread as a coiling snake. "I'm so sorry for your loss." "Thank you," I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. The tension between us thickened as he took the empty chair beside Sarah, who was watching him, her brow furrowed in concern. This felt like an ambush, the collision of two worlds I thought I could keep apart. "Did you know my father was aware of the risks?" My voice was stronger now, forged by my grief and the possibility of rage. The man seemed to flinch at my words, but I didn't relent. That he nodded slowly, the shame etching deeper lines across his forehead. He had been pushing for maintenance checks, for full transparency on the issues plaguing the aircraft. We knew things were being swept under the rug, but we didn't think he hesitated, swallowing hard. We didn't think it would lead to this. There's a difference between knowing and acting. He needed allies, not silence, I shot back, venom dripping from my words as I struggled to breathe through the suffocating sense of betrayal. What were you waiting for? I wish I could answer that, he said, his voice shaking. The system is broken. You must understand, James, we were all trying to keep our jobs, keep our families safe. We thought things could still be worked out. His eyes were pleading, searching for forgiveness that I was still too raw to grant. What system? Sarah interrupted softly, her gaze darting between us like a hawk. What do you mean? James glanced at me, and my heart plummeted. There were rumors, whispers of corporate pressure managers who didn't want to lose profits over minor issues. They told us to keep flying, keep ignoring alarms that would ring in our ears. His face changed, revealing the raw truth etched in the lines around his eyes. But I never thought it would cost lives. I truly believed we could make them listen. How could you all sit by and let it happen? My voice trembled with disbelief. Anguish enveloped me like a heavy shroud, taunting me with the knowledge that despite the warnings, someone somewhere had made a conscious choice to ignore them. My father died because of that ignorance. I'm so sorry, he repeated, and this time, it felt hollow, an echoing lament for lives lost, futures dashed. I heard he had a meeting. He wanted to confront them about everything, the safety issues, the threats of cost-cutting. I thought he was being paranoid. His voice trailed off, regret hanging visibly between us. A memory rushed through my mind. Me father, a testament to undying hope, standing tall with conviction about aviation safety. Hope crumbled into anguish. He believed in protecting others, and yet here, I sat, learning of his misplaced trust. I don't understand how you're still here, I murmured, almost to myself. How can anyone go on knowing you could have stopped this? He looked grieved, a transparency about his soul that shone through even the darkest corners of his mind. I couldn't, none of us could, at least not in time. Everyone was swept away by the storm of corporate greed. As if summoned by my thoughts, shadows flickered at the edge of the cafe. A man dressed sharply in a tailored suit stood beyond the glass doors, scanning the room. His expression was unreadable, yet I sensed an impending storm brewing behind his poised demeanor. I turned my attention back to James and Sarah, fighting waves of panic and overwhelming sadness. Is this true? I asked, my voice trembling. Are you telling me my father tried to do something drastic? Are you saying he risked everything to challenge a system that was bound to destroy him? James folded his hands on the table, his face overshadowed by regret. He was a fighter. He wanted you to have a better future, one free of the fears tied to flying. But there's more to this. His gaze drifted to the man outside, a storm building behind his cloudy eyes. You're going to want to hear what he discovered right before he could finish. The suited man strode inside, his expression stern and unyielding. I felt chills crawl across my skin, an understanding that whatever this looming figure represented was going to change everything. He approached directly, steely resolve in his eyes. James, we need to talk. Now, he said, his voice low, laden with urgency and a hint of threat. In an instant, the world around me shifted, teetering on the brink of catastrophe. The terror of the unknown gripped me. What more could I possibly learn? As they exchanged urgent whispers, I felt the air grow colder. This was the moment that could either anchor me to the last shreds of hope or sink me entirely into despair. What was waiting in the web of truth? The thought sparked wild anxiety within me as I wondered how deep the undercurrents went, and who else might still be at risk of being swept away. My heart thudded painfully in my chest as the revelation dawned upon me. The fight for answers was far from over. How much was left unspoken? And would those revelations lead to answers or deeper scars? I sat frozen, helpless against the looming figure before me. My pulse raced as James' expression morphed from that of regret to sheer dread. The cafe's comforting hum faded into the background, replaced by a fragile silence heavy with implications that could shatter lives further. The man in the tailored suit had an air of authority that crackled like static electricity, the tension so palpable it crackled. Before James could offer resistance, the man gestured with an imperious wave, beckoning him to rise. "You have to come with me now," he insisted, the urgency in his baritone voice slicing through the AIR.no. I interjected, my voice a mixture of defiance and fear. "What can you possibly have to say that I'm not allowed to hear?" James' eyes darted to me, conflicted. "It's not what, it's who," the man interrupted, his gaze snapping back to mine with an unsettling intensity. "We need to move quickly before they realize what we're discussing." "Discussing what?" I felt the words leap from my throat, an urgency almost frantic. "Who is this they?" For a brief moment, I glimpsed a flicker of fear cross James' face, and dread coiled tighter around my heart. Something critical hovered just beyond my grasp. The man turned his focus to me, unyielding. "You're not ready for the depths of this, trust me. But if you choose to believe James, you need to allow him to explain." That I shook my head, a boiling frustration bubbling within. "You don't get to decide what I'm ready for." I shot back. Deep down, I knew I was fishing for strength, any small sense of control amidst a storm I desperately wished to understand. "Please, James," I pleaded as I turned back to him, my voice breaking. "What more do I need to know? Answer me. The truth, however painful, is my only hope right now, James," the man urged, a note of impatience masking the gravity in his tone. "We don't have time. Come on, give us a moment to breathe." Sarah interjected fiercely, her face resolute as she shot James a supportive look. "We deserve to know what's happening. Please." My heart echoed her plea. I needed clarity, a solid ground to stand on after witnessing the trembling abyss of uncertainty. James caught my eye, searching for the right words. "My father had always been unwavering, James. He stood tall against whatever was thrown his way, and his last attempts at exposing the corruption he believed the truth could still save lives." His voice trembled slightly, almost breaking. "What truth?" The question hung between us, floating in the charged atmosphere as I clung to it like a lifeline. "About faulty safety inspections, things that could have been prevented," he finally managed. "This company has secrets, buried far too deep." Suddenly, the cafe felt smaller, as if the walls were closing in, suffocating me under the weight of looming revelations. Why didn't he come to me? My voice cracked with vulnerability. Why didn't he trust that I would stand beside him? James' face softened, sincerity washing over. "He was trying to shield you from the weight of it all. From what it meant for you and the legacy of his fight. He wanted you to move on, but he could see he was running out of time." The words hit me like a tidal wave, threatening to wash away my carefully constructed illusions of my father and his unwavering valor. My heart ached at the thought of him carrying such burdens alone, a solitary crusader fighting against a powerhouse unwilling to buckle beneath the truth. Why didn't he just go to the authorities? I pressed, desperately seeking a connection, something tangible that could help ease the turbulent pain. "Because they were on the take," the man cut in sharply. "You have to understand, we're dealing with interests that extend far beyond your father's death. People who will stop at nothing to maintain their power." "Enough." I snapped suddenly, grief morphing into a simmering fierceness. "You want to protect yourselves? Fine, but I won't allow my father's sacrifice to be swept under the rug. Not now, not ever." As those words sunk into the space between us, the door of the cafe swung open again, bringing in a chill that sent shivers down my spine. A woman stepped in this time, her features sharp, driven, and resolute. She scanned the room briskly until her gaze locked onto James, followed by an immediate sense of recognition. "James," she said urgently, making her way through the throng of tables, her purpose cutting a path clear of the background chatter. "We have to leave now," I began, my instincts flaring, but the raw anxiety painting their faces urged resolution rather than questions. "What's happening?" I demanded, the uncertainty of it all energizing my voice with newfound defiance. "This is bigger than you know," the woman said, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial hush. "You're in danger, James. And it's not just you, it's your family, too. They're coming for you next." The revelation sliced through my fear, an unyielding revelation anchored in dread. I staggered backwards, desperation clawing at my chest as I grappled with the implications. All I had wanted was the truth, but every step closer brought another layer of darkness creeping in. "Who's coming?" The question felt hollow, treacherous in its simplicity. "Get out of here now," the woman insisted, a storm brewing in her tone even as chaos swirled around us. As they gathered, ready to flee the cafe that had become a stage for secrets and revelations, I stood paralyzed by a single thought. Every thread leading me to my father's legacy was rapidly unraveling, and I was left facing the storm alone. "You'll regret," I began, but the last of my protest was swallowed by the cacophony of lives entwined, no longer in descent but in swift evasion before the tempest crashed down. As I looked around, the door closing behind them, I felt a wild sense of loss. In that moment, the air was charged with an echo, a reminder that hope dwelled alongside shadows, and I had yet to unearth the depths of either. The harsh winter wind grazed my cheeks as I stepped outside the cafe, its lingering warmth slipping away from my grasp. My heart raced, each thud inside my chest echoing like a drum demanding attention to the unraveling chaos orchestrated by those who left. I hugged my arms around myself, half expecting the shadows of their hasty retreat to return, yet the streets only held an eerie silence. Under the biting chill, I felt naive, like a small child abandoned in a world that suddenly felt monstrous. Thoughts spiraled, battling between understanding Jameis' fear and the visceral instinct to chase after the truth. My eyes darted towards the alley from where they vanished, my feet instinctively shuffling forward, uncertain yet persistent. If danger hovered just beyond the horizon, what was stopping me? A few blocks down, Sarah's worried voice echoed back in my mind, the memory of her fierce support igniting a flicker of determination. I needed her. I needed someone who could help me anchor myself in this torrid tide. Turning abruptly, I marched toward her apartment, the yearnings of an anxious heart finding purpose, even if it was merely to seek comfort amidst uncertainty. Knocking on Sarah's door felt monumental, each rap resonating with the build-up of unspoken fears. When she opened up, her concern was palpable, as if she had sensed the storm brewing within me. "What happened? Are you okay?" she implored, gripping the doorframe tightly. I don't know," I stammered. "James and that man and just," I exhaled deeply, fighting the swell of emotions. "There's something dangerous happening, Sarah. I can feel it." She stepped aside, allowing me to enter as her brow furrowed with growing concern. "You need to tell me everything. We can figure this out together." I sank onto her couch, an island of vulnerability. All the pieces were scattered. Me father, Jameis' secrets, the ominous threats cloaked in shadows. They said I'm in danger, that they're coming for Jameis' family next. Everything is spiraling out of control. Sarah listened without interruption, her eyes unwavering. She reached out, squeezing my hand as if to share the weight of my fears. "Well, find a way to protect him, to protect you," she promised, her voice firm. "But how?" I whispered, the weight of despair mixed with despair pressing relentlessly against my chest. "What if I can't? What if they really know what's happening, and they come after us?" A moment of silence hung between us, heavy yet strangely calming as she considered. "What if we reached out for help?" she asked tentatively, her mind racing even as we both stood on the precipice of uncertainty. "There has to be someone who can." "Who will, someone?" I echoed, trying to piece it all together. But as much as I wanted to believe in allies, my heart trembled, haunted by doubt. Who do we even trust? The authorities? The same ones complicit in my father's downfall? "I know it sounds hopeless," Sarah said, leaning closer, determination etched into her features. "But we should at least try. We have to be proactive. They can't just control us with fear. Your father's fight deserves to continue." A flicker of hope surged within me. Maybe she was right. Shaking off the insistent dread, I stood taller. "If we're going to do this, we need evidence. Everything your father uncovered, any files, documents we could start there, together, we outlined our approach like strategists marching toward an unseen battleground. We spoke in hushed tones, gathering everything we could remember, piecing together the puzzle scattered in fragments across my mind. The night lengthened around us, the darkness outside filling with secrets as we ignited the spark of resolve. After compiling notes from my foggy recollections and past discussions with James, I began to feel the embers of hope catching fire. What if we went to a private investigator? I suggested, my courage blossoming with each word. Someone who isn't involved and can help us sift through the darkness. An excellent start. Sarah grinned, her spirit infectious. For the first time that night, I felt a surge of warmth, a companion in this fight against an unknown adversary brought back a whisper of safety. No matter what happens, I'm here for you, she said, her expression grounding me further. Well, face this together. As we plowed through the sea of documents I had saved from my father, sorting through the clutter in an attempt to open new doors, the weight of the world began to lift, if only just a little. I made a mental note: tomorrow, we would make the call, take steps that might lead us closer to the truth, but the following day wasn't kind, and our resolve would soon be tested in ways we never anticipated. As dawn cracked open the night, the unthinkable happened. My phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. An icy grip encircled my heart as I answered, each breath heavy with foreboding. Are you sure you want to go down this path? Came a low voice, distorted and trembling, the threat dripping from the words like poison. You cannot protect him from what is coming. What do you know? I fired back with bravado I didn't feel. The voice chuckled darkly, the sound slithering under my skin. More than you realize. And it's time you learned that sometimes, the choices of the past come crashing down like a plane into history, and there's no escaping the wreckage. My stomach dropped as clarity struck, morphing into cold dread. I held my breath, tapping into every ounce of courage I possessed, though it felt meager against the starkness of this revelation. With that single utterance, an invisible thread twisted around us, pulling tighter as the implications sank in. Hope and dread collided, forging a new reality while propelling my thoughts toward the ominous chase for the truth. The path before us was more treacherous than I could have ever imagined. The day felt heavy, thick with the weight of uncertainty and trepidation. My fingers hovered over the phone, the chilling words from last night echoing in my mind. An hour passed, and the moment dragged on, lost in an oppressive haze that made my heart thump with fear. Sarah sat across from me, catching snippets of my restless energy, her brows knitted in concern. Is everything okay? You seem distant, she asked, eyeing me with empathy as she shuffled through the notes we had crafted the night before. Yeah, no, it's just, I stumbled over my own worry. That call, it felt like a threat. What does it mean, a plane crashing into history? I couldn't shake the feeling that something far graver lurked in the shadows, waiting to unravel everything. Maybe it's a metaphor for the danger ahead. Or a warning that we need to tread carefully, Sarah offered, pursuing the thread of hope amidst my despair. Yet, even her optimism seemed fragile, flickering in response to my growing fears that I swallowed hard, uncertain of how to proceed. What if they don't just want to stop me from finding the truth? What if they want to disappear me like they did my father? My stomach knotted at the thought. A sudden knock at the door shattered the suffocating silence, and I felt time stretch, each second heavy with potential dread and fear. Sarah exchanged a meaningful glance with me, stealing her resolve before she moved to answer it. I stood frozen in place, mind racing through the possibilities. The moment she opened the door, a flash of red caught my attention, the vibrant scarf of a stranger peering in. My heart raced, ready to leap from my chest as I mentally rehearsed my escape, should this encounter be another twist in our spiraling tale. But as she stepped inside, the sunlight illuminated her face, revealing an oddly familiar warmth. Hi, she said, her voice gentle. I'm Clara, and I know this might be a little unexpected, but I heard about what happened with your father. I thought you could use someone who understands. My breath caught, wavering between suspicion and the desperate need for companionship in this tangled mess. How do you know about my father? I questioned, narrowing my eyes, Instincts flaring, Clara took a deep breath, her expression sincere yet laced with hesitance. He was fighting for something important, and I've been following the case. I lost someone dear to me in a similar mess. I thought it might be time to connect with others who share this fight. Her gaze shifted to Sarah, as if seeking permission to continue, and I hesitated before motioning for her to proceed. I know it's risky, she continued, but I can help you navigate this. I've gathered information, documents, contacts. I want to do what your father couldn't finish. The passion in her voice inspired a flicker of hope, yet I sensed the weight of tragedy woven into her narrative. Why would you want to help us? I inquired, wrestling with the instinct to trust yet fearing the pain of betrayal, because when the truth gets buried, it affects us all. And I think your father uncovered something big, she finished, her words thick with urgency. I understand the stakes, the fear. But hiding isn't an option anymore. Together, we might stand a chance. Around us, the world felt still, suspended by the gravity of her confession. I glanced at Sarah, who wore a mixture of surprise and appreciation, resonating with Clara's resolve. The idea of collaboration warmed my heart, yet a flicker of caution lingered. How could we guarantee her intentions? Can you really help us? I asked, my voice steady but not devoid of doubt. I can help guide you. But I need your trust. If we're going to uncover the truth about what they're capable of, we all have to be in this together, she replied, her gaze unwavering. As I stood at the crossroads of trepidation and trust, something vital shifted within me. A collective strength began to blossom, the tiny seeds of hope taking root against the backdrop of despair. With Clara's arrival, I sensed a shift in tides, but I still had reservations. Trusting strangers could lead to further heartache. What do we do next? Sarah asked, her determination rekindling an ember of courage within me. Clara produced a file from her bag, laying it on the table. We need this. It's a lead on someone who can give us insight into the group stalking your father, and potentially, whoever is after you. The path is treacherous, and they might already be watching us. I felt the icy grip of anxiety clawing at the edges of my mind as Clara's words sank in. Like the darkness outside gathering before a storm, I knew we were walking into a world fraught with peril. Let's do this, I finally exhaled, unwilling to allow fear to hinder our pursuit of truth any longer. But we need to be careful. If they know we're looking into this, they'll push back harder. Little did I know, a hidden danger loomed closer. My phone pulsed with a new message, the screen lighting up, displaying an all-too-familiar name. It was James. When I turned to show Sarah and Clara, the blood drained from my face as the message read, "I'm in trouble." They're right behind me, every nerve in my body ignited with urgency, the familiar dread clenching tightly around my heart. The atmosphere in the room grew thick with a sense of fear and urgency, an invisible thread tying us together in that moment of shared tension. I glanced at Sarah, her eyes wide and filled with concern, then at Clara, whose expression shifted to one of unmistakable resolve, undeterred by the chaos that was rapidly unfurling around us. James? It felt like a brittle whisper that could shatter under the weight of reality. My heart pounded in my chest as a wave of dread washed over me. We have to go, now. Without waiting for confirmation, I rushed toward the door, my mind racing with thoughts of James. The way had been my anchor amidst the storm, the first ray of hope in a world shadowed by uncertainty. Sarah and Clara followed closely, their footsteps echoing the urgency of the moment. As I dashed down the hallway, every corner held a potential threat, a lurking shadow waiting to pounce. I couldn't shake the idea that some unseen eyes were watching me, tracking my every movement. The world outside the apartment felt like an uncharted territory now, each step further from safety and deeper into a tangled mess where truth and lies danced dangerously close. We reached Sarah's van, parked haphazardly at the curb, and I turned to Clara, my heart racing. "Do you know where he is?" Clara fished through her bag, pulling out a crumpled page with scrawled notes. "He texted me earlier. I think he was going to meet someone near the old aviation hangar, the one rumored to be a part of the initial investigation." "Then that's where we're headed," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady even as panic clawed at my throat. I could feel the tension in the air, buzzing like static electricity, as if the entire universe held its breath alongside me. As I climbed into the van, the space felt too small, uncomfortable, the feeling of being cornered mirrored in every tight movement. The engine roared to life, and as we pulled away from the curb, I found myself scanning our surroundings, convinced that danger was lurking just out of sight, waiting for the opportune moment to strike. "Are you sure he's okay? What if they've already?" Sarah's voice broke through my spiraling thoughts, but I cut her off sharply. "He's fine," I insisted, though my heart quaked at the thought that it might not be true. "James is smart. He knows how to handle himself." The drive was a blur, each gust of wind against the van's window a reminder of the urgency that weighed in the pit of my stomach. I was desperate to reach him but equally terrified of what I'd find when we did. We turned onto a gravel road that twisted into the unpredictable landscape of the old hangars, the remnants of a forgotten era looming above us like ancient sentinels. As we approached the hangar, the faded structure stood in stark contrast against the blue sky, a heavy silence surrounding it that felt almost ominous. My heart raced with uncertainty, each thump echoing the galloping rush of adrenaline coursing through my veins. "Let's check inside," Clara suggested, her voice steady despite the apprehension that gripped me. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat, and we cautiously stepped out of the van. The air thickened with an unspeakable tension as we made our way toward the entrance, every nerve in my body screaming at me to turn back. But what choice did we have? James needed us. Upon entering the hangar, the dim light cast long shadows across the dusty floor. A chill ran down my spine as we stepped deeper into the cavernous expanse. The remnants of broken machinery sat silently, ghosts of the past lingering in the corners, the dust motes floating gently in the dim light sending a shiver down my spine. "James?" I called out, my voice echoing against the metal walls. No response came, just the oppressive quiet that seemed to wrap around us like a shroud. I glanced back at Sarah, who shared my concern, her brows knitted together in unease. Clara moved cautiously forward, her instincts sharper than mine, scanning the surroundings intently. Suddenly, a loud crash broke the silence, sending both of them instinctively closer to me. My heart raced further as the sound seemed to come from deeper within the hangar. "Did you hear that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Clara nodded, her eyes wide with both fear and determination. "Stay close." As we ventured further, a deep-seated dread clawed at me with each step, the shadows morphing into shapes that made it feel like the walls themselves were closing in. I thought about my father, about James, about everything that had led us to this point, a precarious web of danger and uncertainty that I could no longer decipher. "James." I called again, and this time, a faint, distant sound echoed back muffled, as though someone was struggling. My stomach dropped. "Over there." Clara pointed toward a small room at the far end of the hangar. Without thinking, I sprinted forward, my heart pounding, fear consuming me whole. When I reached the door, I threw it open with abandon. The scene before me froze my breath in my throat. There, bound to a chair, was James, his face pale, fear etched in his features, as he looked up at me, relief mixing with alarm in his eyes. "Get away!" he shouted just as a heavy silhouette lurked in the shadowy recesses of the room. Before I could react, it lunged forward. The realization hit me with devastating clarity: the threat was not just external, it had infiltrated our very path. The carpet of hope I had been weaving was about to be unraveled by a sudden, harsh revelation that might change everything. "Run!" I screamed, knowing that deeper darkness was closing in around us. The truth was meant to be unveiled, but at what cost? As the shadows swarmed like enraged bees, I felt the weight of the past crashing into the present, my heart racing not just for my own survival, but for everything held within the fragile threads of what we believed to be real. The sanctuary of the hangar transformed into a battlefield, the air thick with fear and desperation. James' eyes bulged with urgency, warning me of the lurking danger that had yet to fully reveal itself. The echo of my heartbeat filled the silence, suffocating me, reminding me of the fragility of hope in moments like these. "James!" I yelled again, my voice cracking under the weight of the threat. I felt the floor tremble beneath me, a physical manifestation of my racing thoughts. The silhouette continued to emerge from the shadows, larger than life, every bit a harbinger of our worst fears. "Get down!" Clara shouted, pushing me into a crouch. I could barely comprehend her words as adrenaline surged through me, my body coiling like a spring ready to explode. The assailant surged forward, but as I glanced back at James, something flickered in his eyes, a glimmer of hope, perhaps a message of resilience that ignited my determination. I wouldn't fail him. Not now that I pulled out my phone, but the signal was non-existent. We were trapped, disconnected from the outside world. I felt a jolt of panic coursing through me as I heard a sudden crash, followed by the clattering of metal, echoing like thunder in the still air. "Go!" Clara insisted. She was already moving toward the figure, determination replacing the fear that had held her captive just moments before. It was an act fueled by bravery, but insanity loomed in her wake. "Clara, wait!" I tried to warn her, but my shout fell flat. The shadowy figure lunged, and though my heart sank for her, an unexpected twist unfurled in the chaos. In a swift movement, she sidestepped, lifting a wrench from the ground and preparing to defend herself. "James, hold on!" I shouted, desperate to save him while my heart battled against the desire to flee with Clara. "Just get him out." Clara yelled back, her eyes sharp as she focused on her opponent, every muscle of her body ready to fight for us all. The gravity of the situation weighed heavy on me, each second felt like an eternity, as if time had decided to mock our desperation while thieves stole away our very breaths. Resolutely, I turned toward James, but in that very moment, the figure turned its attention to him. My heart froze. "No!" I dashed forward, feeling like a moth drawn to an inferno, desperate and instinctual in my approach. As I reached James, I fumbled with the bindings that held him hostage. "I'm here. We're getting out." I hissed, the words seemingly spurting from my mouth like blood, frantic and raw. "Clara!" James shouted, his voice strained, and I glanced back just in time to see Clara grappling against the figure, her bravery illuminating the darkness like a fiery beacon. "What do you want?" I couldn't help but ask, my voice trembling as I continued to work on freeing James. There was a flicker of recognition in the shadows, a hint of something familiar, yet frightening. In that moment, without warning, the figure took a step back, recognizing perhaps the unpredictability of our determination. "You don't know what you're dealing with," it growled, its voice a chilling mix of menace and cold truth. "Then tell me." I retorted, my desperation breeding a flicker of hope. "What is it you want from us? What does all of this lead to?" My heart pounded in my chest, wondering if I had just opened Pandora's box, inviting a revelation that might shatter my already broken world. The figure hesitated, the tension palpable as Clara used the moment to break free from its grip, striking with the wrench. The metallic clang echoed in the hangar, a harmonious clash against the chaos of our situation. Just then, a brief clarity struck me, illuminating the blurred edges of an unseen danger. "James, are you okay? Can you run?" I urged, hoping beyond hope that in the midst of this madness, he still retained his strength. "That I can walk." He rasped, and with those words, I felt a swell of relief, even amid the chaos. As I finally loosened the last knot, James sprang from the chair, breathing heavily, and we collided in a desperate embrace. It wasn't just relief flooding through me, it was grief, fear, and simmering anger. Whatever was happening here was swirling around us like a tempest, closer than I dared to imagine. "Run! Go!" Clara yelled again, urgency driving her voice as she unleashed another strike against the figure. The clouds of uncertainty swirled thick around us. The only path felt like a leap into the unknown. Yet, despite the looming dread, an unexpected warmth surged through me, an unexplainable conviction that we were not alone in this fight. As we rushed towards the door, something pulled me back, a voice deeper and darker than the shadows. "You'll all regret this." It boomed, an echo that seemed to reverberate off the walls like a death knell, laced with the promise of revenge. In that split second, I turned to face the figure one last time, determination igniting my resolve. I would not let fear dictate my life any longer, and as we burst through the door, the last shred of light enveloped us like an embrace, but a new, even darker question lingered above our heads. What had we uncovered beneath the layers of our own reality, and would we ever escape the ripple of consequences left in its wake? The weight of our choices loomed heavy, a chilling reminder that healing required facing truths we weren't ready to confront. As we bolted for the van, I could already feel the unraveling threads of what we once held dear. This was only the beginning of a much deeper chaos. In the aftermath of our chaotic escape, the cool air outside the hangar felt alive with foreboding, each breath of fresh wind a stark reminder of the fragility of our newfound freedom. I looked at Clara and Sarah, their faces marred by a mix of fear and determination, but I couldn't shake the sense of dread curling in my stomach. Everything had changed within the span of a few moments, a brutal dance with destiny that had pushed us into a world where shadows whispered and truths lurked just out of sight. As we huddled in the van, urgency blended with despair. Every moment felt like a stolen breath. Time was a commodity we could no longer afford. "We need to regroup," Clara said, her voice steady, her eyes betraying little of the turmoil seething beneath the surface. "There's so much we still don't know, but if we're going to push back, we need a solid plan." "James, are you okay?" I turned to him, feeling the weight of those words as they clung to my lips. "Can you drive?" The question was less about his physical ability and more about whether he could muster the strength to face the monster we had barely begun to confront. "It'll be fine," he said, rubbing the wrists that had been bound tightly. He shifted in his seat, determination etched on his features. "Just let's get out of here." As he eased the van onto the gravel road, I glanced back toward the hangar. Was it truly safe to leave that place? With a heart heavy with uncertainty, I turned my focus to the horizon blanketed in a faint, fragile light that signified dawn, yet felt wrapped in ominous hues. The shadows were closing in, and it felt as if we were running from more than just a physical threat. "Where do we go now?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling slightly as if grasping for stability amidst the chaos that surrounded us. I dropped my head into my hands, trying to string together a plan, but my mind was a jumble of questions with no clear answers. "To the cabin," I finally whispered, the decision threading through my memory like a lifeline. It was a place my father had cherished, a refuge tucked away in the woods where we would escape the noise of the world. "We can access his old records, his notes. There might be something there we can use." Clara nodded, her attention razor-focused. "It's secluded, we can figure out our next steps without the prying eyes of those who may or may not be watching us." As we sped down the winding roads leading away from trouble, it was Clara's earlier words that looped in my mind. "When the truth gets buried, it affects us all." My father had sought justice. It was more than just a fight, it was about lives lost because of greed, and I suddenly felt the enormity of what we were up against. The closer we got to the cabin, the more my memories of laughter and joy shifted to darker shades of anguish and loss. I could almost hear my father's voice calling out to me, urging me to confront the truth behind the veil of despair. But the impending weight of what lay ahead churned in my gut. Arriving at the cabin offered fleeting comfort, visages of laughter and warmth flooded my thoughts, yet twisted with the looming specter of loss. The sun hung low in the sky, shadows creeping across the ground, reflecting the urgency, casting a pall over our thoughts. We stepped inside, the familiar scent of wood and dust wrapping around me like a nostalgic embrace. The interior was as I remembered, cluttered with memories, filled with remnants of my father's passion for flight. As I moved to the small desk where he used to write, a sense of purpose ignited within me. We needed to sift through the depths of his past, unearthing the echoes of his fight. Is this where you found his models?" Clara asked, glancing around. "Yeah," I said, my voice soft, my fingertips tracing over the dust-coated surfaces. He always believed in striving for safety, as if every plane he created was a prayer for the passengers. James and Sarah flanked me as we began searching. Each paper, each note was a new puzzle piece. Yet the desire to find closure melted into a desperate need to unveil the truth that could still be hidden beneath layers of time. Finally, Clara stopped, her expression shifting. "What's this?" She held up a folder, yellowed with age, scribbled notes spilling out like forgotten secrets. I stepped closer, heart racing, and my breath caught in my throat when I recognized my father's handwriting. It was filled with details about meetings, safety concerns, and whispers of danger with an undercurrent of worry that could only have stemmed from a looming threat. "This is it," I murmured, the weight of my father's fear settling over me like a shroud. "The truth he fought for was within these pages, read it," Sarah urged, tension evident in her voice. "We need to see what he knew." As I began to read, every word gripped me tighter, pulling me deeper into the heart of my father's battle. He had sought to expose the very shadows that threatened us now, the corruption within an empire built on ignorance and greed. My heart ached as I realized just how close he had been to unveiling something monumental before it all unraveled. With each line that unfolded, hope intertwined with bitter grief. My father's words became my armor, each sentence igniting a fire within me as courage echoed through the generations. I could feel the rage boiling beneath my skin, knowing all that had been lost but realizing we still had a chance to fight back. That I was about to share what I discovered when a loud bang rattled the door, shattering the moment. "Get down!" James shouted, instinctively pushing us behind the furniture as the heart-chilling reality of our circumstances returned with unrelenting vengeance. "Who is it?" Clara breathed, her eyes wide as they darted toward me, silent panic etched into the very fabric of our fight. But before I could react, the door burst open, and a figure emerged, framed by the fading sunlight, hollowed eyes focused directly on me, seething with regret and determination. It was the man from the cafe, but worse. "I should have never let you come here," he emerged in a low hiss, his voice thick with guilt, dark smudges underlining every word. "Why are you here?" I croaked, disbelief stirring in the securities tinged with fear surrounding us. "You don't understand," he continued. "They know. They're coming for you and everyone who believed in the truth. You need to leave." And in that very instant, clarity struck, a jarring wake-up call. All the fears I had wrestled with coalesced into a single thought: the fight to expose the corruption was about to take on a life of its own, and I was at the epicenter. Would it pull me under or set me free? There's no backing down. I won't let my father's efforts be in vain. I proclaimed, fierceness burning in my voice as conviction propelled me forward. I locked eyes with that man. Their fear was palpable, but I now wore my father's resolve like armor, and it shielded me from the lashes of uncertainty. "Then you need to be prepared for what's next," he said, his expression shifting from fear to recognition. "What you're about to embark on will change everything. You have to hold on to your truth." As he stepped into the cabin with resolve, the finality of that proclamation weighed heavily on my heart, a reminder that I was no longer just fighting for my father but for every dream that was ever silenced. And in that moment, I felt the shift, an awakening to the truth I had once feared. As we banded together, a community forged from threads of shared grief and hope, I knew this was just the beginning. Decisions littered the road ahead, and while fear may seek to blind us, we were no longer bound by it. We would fight for the truth, and I would make sure it never faded into history again. And in the depths of my heart, I understood this: some battles were worth every ounce of anguish and heartache, because from that pain, the potential for dreams reborn, our truth began to soar like an aircraft reclaiming the sky, ready to break free from the chains of history. The final thought coiled tightly in my heart, resonating through each of us as we braced against the storm. In the pursuit of truth, every whisper of wind in our sails only carries us higher.